Fleabag is nominated for 11 Emmy Awards this year, including Best Comedy Series, Best Comedy Actress, and Best Comedy Writing for the show's creator, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And in Phoebe, you just swept the Television Critics Association Awards, too. This past weekend, as we're recording this, critics have been really champions of the show from the very beginning. So what was that event and that recognition like?
Well, that was just, extraordinary. We were so supported and have been the whole way through this season by the critics, and they've been writing such in-depth pieces and such personal pieces about it, and so it was just the perfect kind of climax to that conversation at the TCAs. We were completely blown away, and it was really nice to have some of the gang there as well. You weren't originally planning to make a second season of the show. When the show started, it was sort of like one storyline and then done. So at one point, did you get the spark of inspiration to come back to this character and to this world? And what was that spark of inspiration that gave you, the story that was to come for season 2? Well, I knew the biggest challenge was the relationship with the camera, because the relationship with between the camera and Fleabag in season 1 was actually the most complex and important one to me. That she's invited the audience in under the pretense of showing them a good time and telling them that she's hilarious and that she's completely fine and on top of it all. And actually, by the end, you realise that she's brought them in because she's desperate for them to sort of forgive her for this terrible thing that she's done. She's confessed, and by the end of the first season, after she's confessed, she doesn't look at the camera anymore. So it was really how to bring that back and how she would relate to the camera after, she can't have the same swaggering front that she had from the first season, because they now know her secret. So there'd be something more vulnerable about that relationship. And so once I'd sort of really sat with that and then realised that we have to move on that relationship again. And by her meeting somebody who could see what she was doing, that would give it a whole new, a whole new world to play with. But also that she hadn't learned everything that she needed to learn about herself by the end of the first season, which is something that our director Harry Badbit said to me quite early on. He said, if she's, has she learned everything that she could possibly learn? And actually, by the end of the first season, I felt like she had confessed as much as she could confess, but there was still a lot of learning for her, and that's what she does. She learns to hope and she learns to love by the end of the second season.
Well, I was most fascinated by the reunion with your sister in the first episode, because I can't say Fleabag is all fine and good yet, but the fact that she cares so much about reuniting with her sister, who was entrusting her version of events, made me happy. And as much as I like the whole hot priest concept in your relationship there was just something I enjoyed about the two of you seeing eye to eye and being there for each other. And not in a corny way, in a different way.
Oh, good. Yeah, I felt that relationship was one I was most excited to jump back into from the characters from the last season, because and after that heartbreak that they'd been through together, and the fact that they had, the thing that happened between them is probably enough to continue for a lifelong feud. And so, I had to think of something that would just immediately explode that and would bring two sisters back together in an instant. And like you say, like seeing their love for each other and seeing the potential for their relationship in the future in that split second where Claire admits she's having this miscarriage and Fleabag looks after her and Claire accepts, her sympathy and her help. And it's just that little tiny glimmer of what they could be for each other. And it had to be that, because otherwise the whole season, I suppose, would just be them slowly coming back to each other. So I'm really glad that you pulled into that.
But I also enjoyed the whole I look like a pencil bit. That was the thing I laughed at most, because we've all been there where you go to some insane hairdresser and then it turns out it's her own damn fault that she looks like it's wonderful. So thank you for that. But you chose the first episode as your both for, your episode for your acting nomination, but also for your writing. And I wonder why that one you chose.
Well, I feel like in lots of ways it encapsulates the whole season in a really fast-paced way, and it's kind of it's like a kind of mini movie in my mind of that encapsulates all the different characters, all the different relationships, the promise of the love stories, Claire, the interaction between the sisters, and like making that felt like kind of making a play. And we had to be on the whole time, and I felt I'd never had to be Fleabag every single second of the time that we were shooting. But we did round that table. We had to completely embody those characters, and I feel like that episode for me is the closest to showing the whole spectrum of her. Because as it goes on in later episodes, there are like the kind of big like monologue moments or the big dramatic love story moments, but really in terms of the comedy as well, I felt like episode 1 encapsulates both. I'm so proud of everyone's work on it. I think it's directed so beautifully, and all the actors are so on point, and we're all supporting each other, and I felt so held in the writing and in the acting of it that I just feel very proud of that episode.
And that's the episode where you introduce the character of the priest. And, you think of a priest and, you think of a very devout, kind of person. And you find out pretty quickly that he sort of is a little darker, a little edgier, has a mouth on him, is really kind of down to earth in that way. What was that conception like of that character, who is sort of like the opposite of Fleabag in a way, because has such religious faith, but almost like very much her counterpart in another way?
Yeah, I knew that we had to have a character who was a match for Fleabag, because in the last season she can disregard and reduce people to nicknames like arsehole guy or tube rodent, and that was a part of her own kind of a relationship with herself, that she can't get too close to somebody. And I really wanted her to meet somebody who she can't compartmentalize and she can't reduce, and he is as complex and as surprising as she is, but he also has something that he leans on. As much as she leans on the camera and she speaks to her audience, he leans on his faith and he speaks to God. And so in some ways they mirror each other. And then I guess about the character himself of the priest, he had to be a man first before he was a priest, and that was the way in, because I knew I wanted to write about faith and religion, and Fleabag may be finding some sort of way into faith. And then I also kind of wanted her to fall in love. And so there was this kind of like screaming beacon of, it's got to be a priest. The story was saying it had to be a priest. But I was sort of worried about the kind of two sitcom tropey elements of it. But the moment Andrew Scott came into my mind for that role, and when I spoke to him for the first time about it, we spoke for like 4 hours about love and relationships and hope and faith and sex and everything. And it just felt like Andrew sees the world from so many different perspectives, and I knew that he'd bring that to the character and would make him really grounded. And Fleabag tries to call him a cool, sweary priest. She tries to give him that kind of title at the beginning, but he keeps surprising her and he keeps shaking her off. So she can't quite sum him up, and neither can we, hopefully. And so he's kind of mercurial in that way, and very much, and that's got so much to do with Andrew's incredible, beautiful performance of that role.
Well, you created a fashion trend. And that jumpsuit, I mean, I've looked on Twitter, you can find all sorts of ladies trying it on, all different shapes and sizes and things. And how did you come upon that particular one? I know it was made by a certain manufacturer in London, and it's sort of like Topshop prices. It's not very expensive, So I just wondered, how did that come about?
Well, it was very important to me in both seasons that we were wearing clothes that Fleabag could afford, and so it was all the kind of high street stuff. And all this kind of stuff, I wear and my friends wear, and our designer Ray Holman, who's got such an extraordinary eye, he can find things on the high street that look like they're from designer, and he was bringing all these extraordinary clothes to me, and I was saying, Ray, where did you get this? And he'd be like, Next, or like Topshop. And it was sort of joyous that he had that. I mean, he's got such talent for that. And I knew that the first shot of Fleabag that we saw had to be from behind at this kind of posh bathroom window, but I hadn't a mirror, but I hadn't really thought about what she was wearing. And it was suddenly when I was in the costume fitting, I was thinking, my God, the back is so important for that opening shot when we see her again. And Ray had thought about it, and Ray was like, I've got a couple of things to show you, but then I have a wild card. And he pulled out the jumpsuit and we put it on, and it was just instant, because it felt the back was so it was just so graphic in the way that it's just like sharp lines, and it's a kind of glamour to it, but it's also trousers, it's not a dress, and there's this slit down the middle, which is naughty, but it's also up there, which is nice. And he just completely nailed it. So, and it was Topshop, and it was £38.
Right.
And it's a real triumph, but I could never have anticipated the boom of it. And seeing all these, I've seen so many pictures of women looking absolutely fantastic in the Fleabag jumpsuit, and I'm that was one of the coolest. That was one of the coolest sort of side effects to come out of the show.
Well, did they send you any flowers or anything?
No, actually. Although I feel like they've given me enough. They gave me already.
Yeah.
But it did make, and I remember when we first started filming it, we were doing press for Killing Eve at the time, and I had to go and do a kind of press night, and I asked if I could we were filming Fleabag at the time, and I said, can I wear my jumpsuit? So I have actually worn it out in the real world as well, because I loved it so much, and it's just fits so well, and it's flattering on everyone, and so comfortable, and it's stretchy. I cannot recommend it enough.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to your nominations for the show also has nominations for Olivia and Sean in the supporting category, and Kristen Scott Thomas and Fiona Shaw in the guest category. Fiona Shaw, of course, nominated for Killing Eve as well, a role you created there. What was it like bringing her on from that show to suddenly, what made her write as Fleabag's counselor? What made you think that was a good fit? Because it really is a very good fit.
I mean, just Fiona. I mean, I would take, I'd take an axe to anything I'd written if it meant that I could make room for Fiona in it. And earlier on in the schedule, and she wasn't available, and so the script was kind of slightly different. And then she became available later, and so I brought this scene back, and we were doing some reshoots, and then and finally she was available. And the thing about Fiona is she can just sit there, and she's already fascinating, and she has such a huge brain, and for her to play somebody so sharp and so insightful, and also yet completely ridiculous and ludicrous at the same time, with just an arched eyebrow or a flicker of her eye. I mean, I've never seen anyone. She's a magician. I've never seen anyone do what she can do. There's one moment when she says the main line of the scene, when she says to Fleabag that she's named herself as a girl with an empty heart and no friends, and then there's this beat where Fiona's entire face changes from kind of intrigued, befuddled counselor to searing, insightful woman who's about to change Fleabag's life. And it's this minute change, but it's also kind of seismic. She's just incredible. She's so fun to work with as well.
So I want to ask you about James Bond a little bit, because I just wonder, are you trying to make the women more interesting? Is that your job?
I have actually finished work on it now, and I guess, I mean, I was brought in for a polish, so a lot of it was already, the story's still there, but there's some great female characters, great stories there, and they're all, they've all got a lot to do, and all of Daniel's Bond girls have been pretty cool, and so I hope people like them. I think they will. I think they're really fun and cool, and they've been fun to polish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've had a chance to work on Killing Eve. It seems like it's a good kind of stepping stone to a sort of Bond world, because you're in this world of spies and everything like that. But of course, you weren't front and center working on Killing Eve in season 2, as you were working on Fleabag season 2. What was it like handing it off to Emerald Fennell? And is it difficult to kind of entrust your baby in a sense to another writer and another set of hands?
I guess entrusting your baby to like a set of like murderous writers is always kind of nerve-wracking. No, I mean, Emerald, I have such huge admiration for Emerald. I knew her really, really well before. She was a friend, and she'd been developing work with Sir Gentle for a really long time before, so they knew her really well. And it was just so exciting that she was taking it on, because, in some ways, it was so important for each season to have its own voice and its own sense of leadership, and the new writer to be able to completely take it for herself. And the same thing's happening with Suzanne, and Emerald did such a fantastic job, and she's nominated too, along with The Killing Eve lot. So it's hard letting go of characters, but there's a strange, letting go of my responsibility for the characters, but there's also a strange joy in seeing characters you've created in the second chapter of their lives, and you don't know what's going to happen to them. It's a very unusual situation, but a really joyful one, and I'm so proud of what everyone did with that, and Emerald. I'm really excited for season 3 as well.
But I wonder what you grew up watching, reading, whatever. Where are your influences? Because I think you have such a unique way of doing things, especially with Fleabag, that there had to come from somewhere. I mean, obviously it's original, but there had to be some kind of inspirations for you with breaking the fourth wall that way and everything.
Well, I did go. The breaking the fourth wall happened because it was originally a play, a one woman show, and I had to look at the audience for that. So I knew it was going to be breaking the fourth wall in the TV show, but I then went and I mainly watched House of Cards and Alfie for the references, because they were the two of the most. I don't know, they were sort of clever because they were sort of really flawed characters, and particularly the original Alfie, Michael Caine's performance. He's completely impenetrable. His performance, which I thought was so effective, because he had this kind of a kind of laddie kind of persona, and that was really, really useful. So those really helped, and there was a few Woody Allen films that had that I was influenced by as well, the kind of early stuff, and then sometimes it's just a book that I read, and one of the books that first had a massive impact on me was East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and there was a moment in that book that I read in my early 20s that I've never forgotten, when he killed off a character who he'd been setting up for like 4 or 5 chapters, that he seemed like an important character, but he really embedded him in the story in a way that you never thought anything particularly good or particularly bad would ever happen to this character. And so when he kills him off like that in a sentence in like chapter 10, I was devastated, and I was so angry with the book for playing that trick on me. And it took me ages to pick it back up and keep reading because I missed the character so much. And I think that really taught me about telling stories when something incidental becomes something massively significant, or when some small move or some small, even like, and I suppose I take that into looking to the camera, like one look to the camera can betray a huge thing about a character, or one tiny event can change the course of someone's life. And I know as an audience member, those are the moments that I look forward to most in stories. So I'm always trying to deliver that to the audience for Fleabag.
Before we let you go, I know Fleabag, there's no immediate plans to bring back Fleabag for a 3rd season, but how open is that door for, like, if in a year or 2 years or 3 years you get that spark of inspiration that says, oh, I know where this story can go, or is this, you're very happy to kind of put the cap on it here?
I feel like it was her goodbye. I mean, I think the waving really was like the big moment for me of actually realizing that is a goodbye. I mean, I have this fantasy of her coming back when she's 50, or the camera catching up with her in her mid-40s or something, or me in my mid-40s. That excites me, because she would have lived a bit. There'd be other adventures for her to tell us or experience again. But I feel like but I do really feel like it's goodbye. I feel like she doesn't need her audience anymore. I think she's grateful, and she says goodbye.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your Emmy nominations and the TCA Awards, and thank you so much for joining us. And also thanks to everyone watching, and you can watch more of our interviews in our Gold Derby Contenders playlist on YouTube, and you can make your own Emmy predictions at goldderby.com. Thank you again, Phoebe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.